In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how to craft your own PvP masterpiece. Nuke the battlefield, send players packing in body bags. Right now, your build hits like a wet noodle, but I'll break down the combos, stats, and perks you're going to need. Stack damage properly, you'll be sending people straight to the bottom of the abyss, just like on my stream. We'll start with the basics, picking your main weapon, but by the end you'll be crafting builds that outperform even veteran players. So what's the secret sauce? Let me break it down. When it comes to New World, there's 15 weapons you can choose from. I recommend picking your favorite because the weapons in New World are pretty well balanced, just like Thanos would want. For me, I'm a greatsword lover. You might be a spear enjoyer, a bow rat with whiskers, or a rot priest that likes to ruin lives. I'm not here to judge, just stating facts. Once you pick your favorite weapon, head over to attributes. Here you can clearly see what your weapon scales off of. Greatsword, strength and dexterity. This means I can go any strength weapon or any dex weapon and I'll generally be off to the races. If I want to start even better, I can look for a weapon that also has the dual scaling, such as hatchet and spear. This is why these are my two favorite weapons to run with greatsword. Now that we've got the scaling out of the way, how exactly do we pick that secondary weapon? Well, I'll break it down for you. Think about what your primary weapon does for you. For me, greatsword does big damage, sends people to the shadow realm, and makes them live with instant regret. So now let's think. What would synergize best with a weapon that does a lot of damage? Generally a weapon that has good utility. Hammer, it does a lot of damage, but not any utility, so let's X that one out. Great Axe, very good option, as it has reap and charge, two gap closers / reap pulls that can make enemies into corpses. That's a really good option. Spear, same thing, a little bit of a gap closer from skewer, amazing healing, and phenomenal stam sustain. But the best one, hatchet. Why? Because hatchet has two things greatsword lacks: instantaneous burst through raging torrent and berserk, and mobility with social distance, and the haste you can get from these passives. This allows hatchet greatsword to be cemented as one of the best weapon combos in World Aeternum, because they both complement each other amazingly, something I desperately want from you guys. So while you're there, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe, because I'm always going to bring you the best guides in World Aeternum. If you're a ranged goblin, let me break it down for you real quick. Range is your primary source of damage. No matter what weapon you're using, bow, musket, fire staff, ice gauntlet, these are your damage dealers. So the best weapons that generally pair with high damaging weapons is weapons that provide mobility, such as rapier and hatchet, and that's why people have been using these for centuries now, covering what the primary can't. Now that we've got our weapons out of the way, let's head over to attributes and how to properly assign them to make sure you're not a walking potato. Boys, it's time to go broke. Don't worry, it's not with gold, but with attributes. It's a good thing. Let me break them down, how exactly they work, and why this is so important. You're going to want to listen up. First thing, let's talk about Constitution. This is kind of like the difficulty slider for PvP. The more con you have, the less chance you're going to die. It's a no-brainer. But there's a few extremely important passives you want to keep aware of. One being 10% negative damage from crits. Huge for overall survivability, making you more tanky than that man you saw eating the Big Mac at McDonald's. That guy could take a freight train to the stomach and still be standing. Next up, 10% increased physical and elemental armor. Who doesn't love free stuff? This is why I go to Walmart and leave with free things every day. For legal reasons, that's a joke. But now that we got Constitution out of the way, how exactly do we work with weapons with 100% scaling? Well, once you hit 350 threshold, I highly recommend heading over to Con and hitting these two stat bonuses. This will give you more bang for your buck than putting more points into intelligence, especially paired with certain perks I'm going to be talking about later, and this is how it all synergizes together. But for dual scaling weapons, you can get away with 100 or 150 con, as you're able to put 350 into a certain stat and then put the rest into dexterity, or vice versa strength. Some weapons actually benefit from an even split, such as 250-250, depending on which passives you're aiming for and what you're doing. Make sure to always read your passives, as these things are like your cheat sheet for PvP, as some of them are completely broken, like this one, 7% damage to targets below 50% HP, and some of them are useless, like 10% manage on critical hit. Read them, know them, love them. Just like you should love that like button and subscribe button, as I'm always giving you free cookies. Now that our attributes are locked in harder than me when I play ranked, it's time to discuss your armor type. Not all of us are sweaty gremlins living in our mother's basement playing New World all day. We have 7 wives, 6 dogs, and 20 children, so we don't have time to make multiple gear sets. So I'm going to take an educated guess and say whatever you're PvEing with is most likely going to start to carry over to your PvP build. That's completely fine, but that means you're going to be stuck in the same equipment load. Medium, I think, is the best equipment load right now in the entire game for double melee players, as this offers you the best source of damage, mobility, and tankiness. You can definitely PvE in medium, just go 0 con, you'll get into every mutation completely fine. I don't know about Worm and Gorgon, but mutations have done it. It's really good actually. For light players, this is where your range abuser rats live, as it just synergizes best with their kits, as range primarily wants mobility, because they want to be hitting those high numbers so their dopamine spikes harder than that one compliment I get from a girl every year. Now, what about heavy? If you want to do heavy, that's completely fine. Know that your mobility will be as slow as a snail, and if you're a tank for PvE, that's the best role to go. Highly recommend doing it. It's really fun and allows us to completely turn off our Blaine and go full slug mode. But now let's break the armor perks down. This is something that the gremlins, the professional players, don't want you to know, as this is kind of the cheat sheet to how to get good at PvP. So what perks should you prioritize? Well, lucky for you casuals, Enchanted Ward is meta in both PvP and PvE, as the entire game is coded around light and heavy attacks because New World devs were too lazy to think of another way to code damage. Just like how I'm too lazy to finish this. Next perk, Shirking Heals is completely and utterly broken in World Aeternum. PvP only. Attacks heal you for a good portion of your HP, plus the max health you have. This is why stacking con is so valuable with weapons that scale off only intelligence, as your shirking heals will not only hit harder, but you'll be a hard rat to squash. After that, your third perk is more weapon dependent, as some weapon perks are crucial and turning your build into a demon king, where others are more passable. An example of this is Keen Berserk for Hatchet. This is a 100% must. Hatchet is not a real weapon without Keen Berserk, so make sure you do your own research for your weapon and read each perk, as you might be losing a lot of damage just from not slotting the perk that your weapon needs to come online. Imagine playing Hatchet and losing 40% damage. You might as well throw that in the dumpster out back and never talk to it again. That's something I feel like a lot of players miss. They feel like they're not doing damage and they don't know why. Well, you might be missing an important weapon perk, as these things skyrocket your damage. For your third perk for your gear, I highly recommend just choosing whatever you want. It's not as important, as once you have Shirking Heals and Enchanted, you're good to go. But a few key perks right now that are extremely strong are Vital Synergy, which gives you increased healing while your health is below 50%, and increased stamina regenerate when your stamina is below 50%. This is a very broken perk, and I highly recommend putting it on your chest if you can. Since Season 10 is around the corner, I don't recommend respeccing your whole build. I'm just giving you the tools, the knowledge to build it next season, as I would assume New World Aeternum is going to have the same type of logic, where stacking the most broken perks will be meta. How do you know what weapon perks are good for each weapon? Well, first, think about what your weapon likes to do. For example, Greatsword likes to smack people across the face with heavy attacks. So stuff that gives you increased heavy attack damage is very strong, such as Trenchant Strikes and crits. For Hatchet, it's Quick Burst that relies on abilities to deal damage. So Keen Berserk, Vicious are very good here, along with stuff like Keenly Empowered or Penetrating Backstab, as when you hit someone from behind, you penetrate 30% of that player's armor. This is super broken for melee weapons, as more than likely you'll be smacking it from the back. And Pen Backstab, very good at that. But there's too many weapons in the game to break down every exact best in slot perk. So I'll give you a few categories to think about when choosing your weapon perks. 1. Does my weapon have an insanely overpowered weapon perk that if I put on my weapon, it will totally be worth it? Two examples of this. Skewer, 50% damage reduction for 6 seconds. That is absolutely insanity. The devs must be smoking all the flowers in Amazon Studios for that perk. If you get hit by this in PvP, you'll be doing no damage for 6 seconds. Example of a broken weapon perk. Another one, Keen Berserk, is very broken. 20%, 20%, 40% extra damage. Now we're cooking like Gordon Ramsay. So think about it. Do I have a broken weapon perk? Yes, put it on your weapon. If not, just leave it to your armor. Next up, ask your weapon, does it do primarily ability damage or heavy and light attack damage? This is crucial as this allows you to break down the next few perks we want. 1. Vicious is generally always good on every weapon, as it's just flat damage. Attunement is another very strong one, especially with weapons that don't have a very high uptime, as this has a 1.5 second cooldown, which is extremely good on weapons that are slower to hit, like Fire Staff and Musket, as you generally aren't going to be Shroud in hitting every shot. So that attunement will pretty much be up every time you land a bullet. That's why it's so valuable. Another big one is Keenly Empowered. As empowerment, we'll get more into that later, as this is the most important mechanic in New World to understand properly. Now that we got our weapon perks out of the way, how exactly do we gem it up? Gemming is one of the most broken things in World Aeternum. Let me break down exactly why. Head over to your rune glass station. Open this bad boy up, and it's time to start cooking, like Walter White. Head over to whatever rune glass you want. You can then hover over it and see exactly what it does. Let me break down the electrified amber for you. This on your gear will give you 2% extra lightning damage. This is extremely crucial for many reasons. 1, you can stack that 5 times on your armor, giving you a total of 10% more damage, increasing your DPS significantly. You can do that for melee as well, where you put 5 melee pieces in here. The cool thing about the melee pieces is they don't actually count towards the empower cap like these lightning gems do. This is primarily used in range builds such as Fire Staff and Ice Gauntlet, Musket, as you're able to stack one elemental very efficiently, allowing you to hit the empower cap way easier on these types of weapons, as you're not able to do that without rune glassing. I'll break down empowerment here in a sec, because that's very important to understand. Right now, let's focus on gems. Another important thing to note is to rune glass your weapon. These things have special bonuses, but if you want more damage, putting a hex rune glass in there will give you 8% arcane damage per second for 2 seconds. Who doesn't love watching someone burn down to ash? That is more overall damage than something like the opal. This is meta for every build in the entire game except for a blood drinker rat like me, where you can't heal off dots with blood drinker, so it's better just to run a pure opal gem. How about for what gems should you slot into your gear overall? Opals, onyxes, moonstones, so many to choose from. It's like Pokemon cards, you want to collect them all, but you just don't have the time or money. I recommend going with the 5-3 split. 5 opals, 3 onyxes. This will cover the vast majority of builds in New World, as most builds right now are doing elemental damage. This could change in Season 10, but right now most people are wizards casting disappointment. But let's break down now why exactly empowerment and base damage are so crucial to your build, and why your jewelry choices really do matter at this point. What exactly is empowerment and base damage? Empowerment comes in many forms in New World, and sometimes it's hard to spot, and it won't always tell you it's empowerment. An example of this is slash damage on my ring. That is 8% empowerment. Empowering has a cap of 50%. Your goal on every build in World Aeternum is to get as close to that cap as humanly possible. So we get 8% on my ring. If we hit tab, we go to attributes. If I had dexterity, I get another 10% empowerment from dodging. That would give me 18%. All right, let's keep going. When I dodge on my greatsword, another 10%. That's 28% empowerment. And where do I get the rest of my empowerment? My amulet. This thing gives me 21%. 21 plus 28 is 49% empowerment. When you add in a honing stone on top of that, I am now past the empowerment cap. This is what allows me to hit like an absolute nuclear missile in PvP, because I'm always empower capping myself. That's why I advocate so hard for shirking empowerment on my amulets in every build I play, as most people don't know how to get to the empowerment cap, and this thing is kind of like a crutch. It allows you to get there very easily while sacrificing some mitigation. But for most people, they like seeing high damage numbers on the enemy and watching them explode and hoping they get an angry message afterwards. And shirking empower is a great way to do that. The other two amulet perks, Divine and Health, are just best in slot in my opinion. But what about base damage? Base damage is this weapon number on your gear, 2018 base damage. That means if I have something that increases my base damage by a certain amount, a good example of this would be on Sword and Shield. Upheaval has 180% damage. This gets increased by 20% base damage. Keyword base damage. That means this does not count towards the empowerment cap. This is crucial to note, as this means I can still aim for 50% empowerment without keeping this passive in mind. While the passive down here, Leadership, tells you flat out, you get 10% empowerment at all times on Sword and Shield. So you just minus 10% from 50%, 90, 40% more empower to go. This is why an artifact like Tumblers is considered so overpowered in PvP. This gives you 15% empowerment just from dodging, and a vast majority of builds in New World Aeternum cannot ever hit empower cap without something like Tumblers. This is why you see this artifact everywhere in the game. On top of it, it gives you Fortify and Health, making it hands down, in my opinion, the best artifact in the entire game for the vast majority of builds. But for me, I like Creep Boots. Why? Because I already can hit empowerment. I don't need Tumblers for that. So I get an additional 20% increased crit damage. I also flip them with a weaken, and this also gives me 10% empowerment, allowing me to hit way harder. The empowerment then multiplies my base damage, so it hits way harder than someone who's not properly stacking empowerment. Understanding this is probably the single most valuable point you can understand in the entire video, is how to stack empowerment efficiently. As certain weapons, like the Fire Staff, have an insanely hard time stacking empowerment, where the Void Gauntlet can basically hit it on its own through Baleful Tether and Oblivion. This is why you see people run Void Gauntlet with bow and Void Gauntlet with musket, because the Void Gauntlet can give bow and musket empower cap very easily, because empowerment is the key to victory. Just like you smash that like button, subscribing, and that's the key to my victory. And while you're at it, join the Gremlin Hall of Fame. We have got cookies, McDonald's pops, and some french fries on the side for you. You also get a cool badge, and you'll be cemented in the lore books for all the years to come. Let's break down the rest of the perks for our jewelry now. For your ring, you only need 2 perks, Hardy and a damage increase. This is crucial, as one allows you to increase your empowerment, getting closer to that critical empowering cap, while Hardy gives you an absolute essential extra roll. As I know, when you're in PvP, you're going to be making mistakes, and the ring's got your back, like an old friend. For earring, fortifying, refreshing, and regenerating, what more could you want for a medium or heavy build? For a light enjoyer, I recommend switching out fortifying toast for empowering toast, as an empower cap is just too juicy to avoid. Now with jewelry out of the way, how do we choose the artifact that will make or break our build? Next up, let's break down artifacts. As these, can send to the top of the scoreboard or 6 feet under. The choice is yours. Let's break down armor first. Armor is generally your offensive artifact. This comes in many different forms. Creed boots, insane for smacking booties from behind, as this thing will send them flying to Narnia. For tumblers, it's a good mixture of both offensive and defensive. So make sure you choose the meta defining artifact for your build. If you want more defensive, choose a defensive artifact like Void Plate for heavy builds. If you want more offensive, something that gives you a lot of damage like Creed Boots. New World Aeternum devs don't really know how to balance items properly, so they'll add a bunch of random numbers, and that artifact will generally be the most broken. How about for jewelry? Really is very simple as there's only 3 artifacts: Ankh, Endless Thirst, and Blood Drinker. Solo player, Blood Drinker, hands down best in slot unless you're a light rat. Endless Thirst is best in my opinion for light builds, as this comes with an illegal perk combination, Empowering mixed with Fortify. And Ankh is hands down game changing if you have a healer in your back pocket, as this thing makes you into an unkillable Demon King. For weapons, just pick whatever weapon looks the fanciest. Now this one's a lot harder to tell. But a good rule of thumb, if the weapon gives you more overall damage, it's probably better than the other one. Now that our build hits hard, has insane survivability, it's time to break down the potions, the consumables that we'll be chugging all day long. Goblins, it's time to start your addiction that you'll never forget. Lock in, because this ride's about to get bumpy. Let's go over potions, the most important part of your build. Serums, 400 health, but the real magic, 1.1% max HP, 3 stamina, 3 mana per second for 25 seconds. That's longer than I last in bed. Pop this before you enter the fight, because that 1 second chug delay, that's Tombstone City. Next are burst regen potions. Think of these of, oh crap, I made a mistake and I regret it. Immediately, 1,500 health plus 7% max HP. Lifesaver, literally. Next up, damage reduction pots. Pick your poisons, fire, void, ice, whatever you're feeling today. This will give you a flat damage reduction by 15% for 30 seconds. That's like having a flamethrower proof suit with the fire extinguisher on hand. Your enemies, molding guaranteed. Holding stone, don't sleep on these. Sunrise, dot duration, 25% reduced for 40 minutes. New world is full of burns, diseases, and debuffs. Keep this up 100% of the time. Like deodorant at work, nobody wants to smell chaos. Food, don't skip it. Bring your 48 con food to the brawl. Don't be that guy who misses Taco Tuesday. Extras like oak flesh bombs and gemstone dust are nice but not mandatory. Damage absorption beats armor buff survivability every time. Even though this says damage absorption, watch me bust a myth. I have 1100 armor. I pop this bad boy. Now I have 1150. Instant tankiness, but not as broken as absorption potions. Now consumables are locked in. Next up, heart rune, combos, master these, and your build will skyrocket. This is the key to PvP domination. So how exactly do we use our weapons properly to get the most bang for our buck? Well, the best weapon in the entire game to showcase this, hands down, sword and shield. If I walk up to this enemy and just hit him with an upheaval, it's 5,000 with no crit. But if I was to fully stack my damage multipliers, we can get way higher. For example, my sword has Leaping Strike. This will allow my next ability to do 33% more damage. They're gonna need some serious band-aids after this one. Next up, if we open up our tree and head over to Sword and Shield, it's time to read some passives. 1. Upheaval does additional damage to stun, rooted, or slowed target, getting it up by another 20% base damage. Bam, one more. A successful heavy attack grants empowerment for 5 seconds by 30%. You're about to watch a skill go from the sewers to the top of the skyscraper. We can Leaping Strike in, heavy, shield rush, into upheaval. Bam. 9k. We almost doubled our ability's damage by using our passives properly. The sword and shield has a lot of damage multipliers, but for other weapons, they have this as well. Great sword, dodging, more damage. Blade honing. For each buff on you, you get 3% increased damage. That is just stonks going up. Make sure you read every passive carefully, as that is the key to unlocking your weapon's full potential and full damage number. A big one is evasive tactics on the bow. Gain empowerment for 15% after dodging. Understanding your passives is key to victory, and without them, you'll be a walking tombstone. For the final part of our build, heart rune. Highly recommend always staying with stone heart rune form, as this is just hands down the best heart rune in the entire game. If you're feeling spicy, like I mean jalapeno spicy, you can run the brutal heart rune of dark descent. This allows you to fly up in the sky like a beautiful butterfly. Now that we've covered everything, I hope you can go out there and start digging graves. If you're new here, make sure to smash that like button and subscribe. And while you're at it, join the Goblin Gremlin crew. If you join now, you'll be cemented in Goblin history for all the days to come. You get a cool badge. You can make me do whatever you want me to do on stream. I'll be your little poodle, bark for you, do tricks, whatever you ask.